Hello readers, welcome to this channel. Please subscribe and leave a like for us. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you. As you do so, sit back and relax as we dive into this story. The rain had been falling since dawn, a steady gray curtain over the village of Brambleton. Clara Hayes stood at the window of her small house, drying her hands on her apron. Her late husband's surgery table still stood in the front room, neat and empty now. Sometimes she ran her fingers over the scratches in the wood and remembered his steady hands, his warm laugh. Today the room felt even quieter than usual. She was about to blow out the lamp when a sharp knock rattled the front door. Clara frowned. Few people came this late, and never in such weather. She wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders and opened the door. Cold wind rushed in, along with the smell of wet earth, and a hunched figure on the step. "Mrs. Hayes," croaked old Mrs. Carter from the cottage at the edge of the village. Her gray hair was soaked, pinned up crookedly under a shabby hat. In her arms she held a bundle of worn blankets. "Please, I didn't know where else to go." Clara's eyes dropped to the bundle. A small face peeked out, pale and flushed, eyes half closed. The child's lips were dry and cracked. He shivered even under the thick cloth. "Oh, my goodness," Clara breathed. "Bring him in at once." She stepped aside, and Mrs. Carter stumbled through the doorway. Clara shut out the rain, then rushed to clear the old surgery table. She spread a clean sheet across it as Mrs. Carter laid the child down. Now that she could see him clearly, Clara's heart twisted. He looked about 4 years old, with tangled brown hair plastered to his forehead. Dirt smudged his cheeks. His breathing came in quick, harsh pulls. "He's burning up," Clara said, touching his brow. "How long has he been like this?" "A few days, maybe more," Mrs. Carter said. She leaned on the table, panting. "He came to my door with his mother weeks ago. She was coughing, thin as a twig. Said her name was Eliza Moore. They were looking for work. I took them in, best I could. But the fever took her last month, and now it's got him too." Clara's throat tightened. She had seen fever do its cruel work many times. "And you've been caring for him since then?" "As best an old woman can." Mrs. Carter shook her head. "He's all alone now. No father that I know of. No relations. Only this." Her wrinkled fingers fumbled with something at the child's neck. A dull gleam slipped out from under the blankets. It was a small silver locket on a thin chain. Even in the dim light, Clara could see it was no cheap trinket. The silver was heavy and smooth, engraved with a crest. A bird, perhaps a falcon, stood with wings half spread above a curved shield. Tiny letters curled beneath it. Clara felt a strange chill. "She left this for him?" Mrs. Carter nodded. "She made me promise he would keep it. Said it belonged to his father. Said it proved who he was." Her voice broke on the last words. Clara gently turned the locket over. The back was plain, but the front shone with careful work. Her husband had once told her that only noble families used such crests. She had never imagined she would hold one in her hand. "What is his name?" she asked. "Samuel," Mrs. Carter said, then coughed, a deep, rough sound that shook her shoulders. She pressed a hand to her chest and swayed on her feet. Clara stepped forward. "Sit down." "You're not well yourself." "I'll be fine," the old woman muttered, waving her off. But her face had turned slightly gray. "Please, help the boy. I promised his mother I wouldn't let him be turned out." "You have my word," Clara said. "I will do everything I can." She mixed fever powder into water, coaxed Samuel to swallow, and wiped his face with a cool cloth. His skin was too hot, but he stirred a little and whispered a word that sounded like "Mama." Clara's heart squeezed as she tucked the blankets around his small body. When she turned to speak to Mrs. Carter again, the old woman was leaning heavily against the chair, her eyes closed. Her breath came in short, painful gasps. "Mrs. Carter?" Clara said softly. The old woman's eyes fluttered open. "I knew. My strength was gone," she whispered. "If I fell on the road, no one would find him. I had to bring him to you. You're the only one who ever helped without asking for anything." Clara knelt beside her, taking her hand. "I'll see him safe. I promise." Mrs. Carter's hand tightened around Clara's fingers with surprising strength. "The locket," she rasped. "Don't sell it. Don't pawn it. It's his only chance. His father, Eliza said he was a great man once, a lord or a duke. I can't remember. But he must know the boy exists. Maybe he'll care." Clara's gaze flicked to Samuel's face. His chest rose and fell, thin and fragile. An orphan, perhaps, with a noble father somewhere who did not even know his son lived or suffered. "I will try to find him," Clara said quietly. "For Samuel's sake." A faint smile softened the deep lines on Mrs. Carter's face. "Good woman," she murmured. "Good girl." Her eyes drifted closed again. Clara called her name, shook her shoulder gently, but there was no answer. By morning, Mrs. Carter was gone. The village vicar came, said prayers, and promised to arrange a simple burial. When the small figure wrapped in cloth was carried out, Samuel slept on, his hand curled around the locket chain. Clara stood at the doorway, watching the rain ease into a light drizzle. In one day, the boy had lost the only person in the world who had tried to protect him. Now he lay in her house, feverish, alone, clutching a secret around his neck. She could have told herself that he was not her burden. She was only a doctor's widow. She was not rich or powerful. Her own life had been quiet since the day her husband died, and left her with his books, his medicines, and a hollow, aching space beside her bed. But as she walked back into the surgery room and saw Samuel's frail body on the table, she knew that turning away was impossible. Clara adjusted the blanket under his chin and brushed his hair from his forehead. His skin was still too hot, but his breathing had eased. The locket glinted at his throat. "All right, little one," she whispered. "We'll face this together, you and I." She picked up the locket and looked again at the engraved crest. Somewhere a man had once worn this on his watch chain or kept it in a drawer. Somewhere a man with power and land and a title lived his life while his son lay in a village widow's house, fighting a common fever. Clara straightened, feeling a quiet strength rise in her chest. She would find out who that man was, and when she did, he would have to hear the truth. The fever broke on the third night. Samuel woke in the dull gray light just before dawn, his eyes clearer, his hair damp with sweat. He blinked at the unfamiliar ceiling, then turned his head and winced. Clara was there at once, her chair pulled close to the table where he lay. "Easy," she said softly. "You're safe. I'm Clara. Do you remember Mrs. Carter?" Samuel's mouth trembled. He nodded, then swallowed hard. Where is she?" Clara's hand stilled for a moment. She had been waiting for this question. "She was very tired," she said gently. "Her body could not keep going. She died the night you came here." Tears filled his eyes at once. He turned his face into the blanket, shoulders shaking. "She told me we were going to the doctor's house," he sobbed. "She said you would help." "And I will," Clara said. The words felt like a promise written on stone. She reached out and placed her hand lightly on his back, feeling his small frame tremble. "She brought you to me because she wanted you safe. I will make sure you are not alone." It took a long time for his sobs to quiet. When he finally lifted his head, his eyes were red and swollen. He fingered the locket at his throat, the chain twisted in his fist. "Is that important to you?" Clara asked. His fingers tightened. "Mama said never to take it off," he whispered. She said it was from my father. She said, if anything happened, someone might know what it meant." "Do you know your father's name?" Clara asked, keeping her voice calm. Samuel shook his head. "She only said he was a great man once, but he wasn't there when I was born." He sniffed. "He doesn't know about me." That's what she told Mrs. Carter once when she thought I was asleep. Clara felt a small, sharp pang. She had never had children, though she had wanted them. Her husband had died before they got the chance. To think of a woman birthing a child alone, carrying a secret like that, made her chest ache. "May I look at the locket more closely?" she asked. Samuel hesitated, then nodded. "You won't take it?" "I will not," Clara promised. She unclasped the chain and held the locket in her palm. The crest caught the morning light. Up close she could see the letters beneath the bird more clearly. A single word, curved in tiny script. Ashbourne. Her husband had often spoken of the great families in the county. Ashbourne. It tugged at her memory. The name had the weight of land and old stone. "Have you ever heard of the Duke of Ashbourne?" she asked Samuel. He shook his head again, rubbing his nose on the blanket. Clara smiled a little. "It's all right. It was only a question." She fastened the locket gently back around his neck. "For now, you need rest and food. We will worry about the rest later." But she did not wait very long at all. That afternoon, after Samuel had eaten a small bowl of broth and fallen back asleep, Clara wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and tucked the locket's image into her mind. She walked to the vicarage at the end of the lane. Reverend Marsh was a thin, stooped man with kind eyes and ink-stained fingers. He opened the door with surprise. "Mrs. Hayes, is something the matter?" "I need your help," Clara said. "I wish to look at the parish records, and any books you may have about the great families in this area." He raised his brows. "That is an unusual request. May I ask why?" She thought of Samuel's hot skin, his thin arms. "A child has been left in my care," she said. "He wears a locket with a crest. I believe it belongs to a noble house. If I can find out which one, I may be able to send word to his father." Reverend Marsh studied her for a moment, then stepped aside. "Come in, Mrs. Hayes. I will help in any way I can." His study smelled of dust and old leather. Shelves lined the walls, packed with books and ledgers. While he fetched a heavy volume from the top shelf, Clara pulled the locket sketch she had made from her pocket and laid it on the table. "A falcon above a shield," the vicar murmured, sliding his glasses up his nose. "Yes. This seems familiar?" He turned pages slowly, licking his finger and leaving tiny smudges on the paper edges. For a long time there was only the sound of turning pages. Then he stopped. "Here," he said. He turned the book so she could see. A drawing, faded but clear, showed the same bird, the same curve of wing, the same shield. Beneath it was written, "Merrow, Duke of Ashbourne. Seat, Ashbourne Hall. Motto, faith and honor." Clara felt a strange tremor in her chest. The Duke of Ashbourne. He was the highest noble in their county. People spoke of him with distance, as if he were part of some far-off story. She had never expected his name to come into her life. "The boy's mother must have been connected to Ashbourne Hall somehow," Reverend Marsh said. "Perhaps a servant, perhaps more than that." He cleared his throat. "What do you intend to do?" "I intend to write to him," Clara said. The words sounded wild, even to her own ears. She, a doctor's widow in a small village, writing to a duke. But when she thought of doing nothing, of letting Samuel grow up with no name, no protection, and a treasure around his neck that might bring more harm than good, her resolve hardened. "Are you sure?" the vicar asked gently. It is no small thing to accuse a man of fathering a child outside of marriage. Even a silent accusation carries weight. He might deny everything. He might ignore you entirely. "He may do as he pleases," Clara replied. "I only know what I must do. The boy deserves that chance." The Reverend studied her, then gave a small nod. "Very well. Use my table. I will see that the letter is sent by reliable hands." Clara sat, smoothed a sheet of paper, and dipped the pen in ink. Her hand shook a little at first. She had never written to someone so far above her in rank. She did not know the right titles or phrases, but she knew how to tell the truth. "To His Grace, the Duke of Ashbourne," she began. She told him about Samuel, about his fever, about Mrs. Carter, and the dying woman named Eliza, who had clung to a silver locket and a promise. She described the Crest as carefully as she could. She did not accuse. She did not beg. She only wrote, "There is a child in my care who wears the crest of Ashbourne at his throat. His mother is dead. He has no name but Samuel. If there is any connection between this boy and your house, I ask, for the sake of justice and mercy, that you consider his case. I seek nothing for myself. Only that he not be left alone in a world that can be cruel to the small and the poor." She signed the letter, "Clara Hayes, widow of Dr. Edmund Hayes, Brambleton." When she folded it and sealed it with a simple wax stamp, her hands were steady. 2 days later, a hired rider took the letter on the long road to Ashbourne Hall. At that same hour, miles away, the Duke of Ashbourne sat in his study, staring at numbers that refused to stay on the page. Nathaniel Merrow had never cared for accounts. He had inherited his title 5 years earlier, along with crumbling walls, worried tenants, and a stack of debts. He was still learning how to carry them all. The morning sun fell through the tall windows and lay in long bars across the desk, but his mind was far away. A knock came at the door. His butler, Carson, stepped inside. "A letter for you, Your Grace, delivered by special rider," Carson said. "From whom?" Nathaniel asked without much interest. "A Mrs. Clara Hayes from Brambleton, sir." Nathaniel frowned. "I do not know the name. Leave it there. I will see to it later." He tried to return to the estate accounts, but his gaze kept drifting back to the folded letter. Something about it tugged at him. At last he gave in, pushed the ledgers aside, and picked it up. The handwriting was neat and careful. As he read, his brow tightened. A boy, a village widow, a locket bearing his crest, a mother named Eliza, a promise made on a deathbed. He stopped breathing for a moment. Eliza. Her name was a fist around his heart. He had not heard it in 4 years, not even in his own thoughts, not if he could help it. Yet now it sat on this page, as sharp as the day he had watched her walk away from him down the long drive. Back then he had been young and angry and proud. She had been a seamstress's daughter who had stolen his heart with her quick smile and calm eyes. Their love had been brief and foolish, a summer that burned too bright. When she told him she was with child, fear had drowned everything else. He had offered money, a house even, far away where no one knew them. He had not offered his name. "I will not be your secret," she had said, standing at the gates of Ashbourne Hall, her bag at her feet. "I will not raise our child in shame. If you cannot stand beside me, I will go alone." He had let her go. Now, years later, a letter lay on his desk about a boy with his crest at his throat and a dead mother whose name was Eliza. Nathaniel sat very still. Then, with hands that were not as steady as he wished, he rang the bell. Carson appeared at once. "Your Grace?" "How far is Brambleton?" Nathaniel asked. "About a day's ride, sir, perhaps a little more if the roads are bad." "Have my horse ready within the hour," Nathaniel said. "No carriage, and no one is to know where I have gone. Is that clear?" Carson's brows rose, but he bowed. "Yes, Your Grace." When the door closed, Nathaniel looked back at the letter. The ink had dried in thin, dark lines. He imagined a woman with tired eyes bending over a table, writing about a feverish boy who did not know his father's name. "If you are mine," he whispered into the empty room, I will not turn away this time." He folded the letter carefully and slipped it into his pocket. Then the Duke of Ashbourne left his grand house and rode toward the small village of Brambleton and the child who might be his son. The village of Brambleton looked even smaller than Clara had imagined a duke might see it. Low stone cottages hunched against the wind. Children played in the muddy lane, stopping to stare as the tall stranger on horseback rode past. Clara, peering through the surgery-room window, saw the rider slow and look around as if searching. Her stomach tightened. Samuel sat on the table, swinging his legs. His fever was gone now, and color had returned to his cheeks. He held a wooden toy horse that Clara had found in a box of old things. When the hooves of the real horse clopped to a halt outside, he looked up. "Who's that?" he asked. Clara's heart beat faster. "We shall soon see." A firm knock sounded on the door. She took a breath, smoothed her dress, and opened it. The man on the step was not dressed as she had expected. He wore a dark, well-cut coat, but there was no gold on his shoulders, no rows of buttons, no bright sash. His boots were muddy from the road. Only the straightness of his posture and the sharpness of his eyes hinted at his rank. "Mrs. Hayes?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "and you are?" "Nathaniel Merrow," he replied. He paused for the slightest moment, then added, "The Duke of Ashbourne." The words hung between them. Clara felt her breath catch. She had never stood so close to a duke in her life. "Your Grace," she said quickly, stepping back. "Please, come in." He ducked under the low doorframe, his presence filling the little surgery room. His gaze went first to the table where Samuel sat clutching his toy. The boy stared back, wide-eyed. Clara watched the Duke's face change. For a heartbeat, he looked as if someone had struck him. Then he drew in a slow breath. "How long has he been here?" he asked quietly. "Almost a week," Clara said. "He came with an old woman, Mrs. Carter. She died the same night." "And his mother?" His voice was low, tight. "Her name was Eliza Moore," Clara said. "She died of fever weeks before. Mrs. Carter said she mentioned a man once, a great man who did not know about the child. This—" She reached gently for the locket at Samuel's neck. "This is the only thing she left for him." Nathaniel stepped closer, his eyes never leaving the boy's face. "May I?" he asked. Samuel shrank back a little, looking at Clara. "It's all right," she said softly. "This is the man I wrote to you about, Samuel. He only wants to see the locket." The boy's fingers relaxed. Clara unclasped the chain and placed the locket in the Duke's hand. He held it as if it might burn him. His thumb traced the falcon, the shield, the tiny letters of his own title. He swallowed. "Where did she get this?" he murmured. "I hoped you might know," Clara said. Nathaniel opened the locket carefully. Inside, under a thin sheet of glass, was a tiny sketch of a woman's face. The quick lines brought her to life, despite the small space, the curve of her cheek, the steady eyes. His hand shook. "Eliza!" he breathed. Clara looked at him. "You knew her," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," he said, then more firmly, "Yes." He closed the locket and looked at Samuel again. Up close, it was impossible not to see the echoes. The same dark hair, the same shape of brow, the same line of chin that Nathaniel saw in his own mirror. "Does he have any marks on his body?" he asked suddenly, then flushed at his own bluntness. "I mean, birthmarks? Anything unusual?" Clara blinked, then nodded slowly. "Yes, on his left shoulder, a small mark shaped like a crooked star. I noticed it when I was bathing him after the fever." Nathaniel let out a breath that sounded half like a laugh and half like a groan. "Every Merrow man in my line has had such a mark," he said. "My grandfather said it was God's way of stamping us so we could never deny our blood." He looked at the boy, at the locket, at the memory of Eliza's last angry tears on the day she left him. He felt the years between then and now like a weight pressing down on his chest. Samuel shifted on the table, uneasy under the stranger's gaze. "Why are you looking at me like that?" he asked in a small voice. Nathaniel stepped closer until he was only an arm's length away. His throat worked. When he spoke, his voice shook. "Because," he said softly, "I believe you are my son." The words seemed to fill the little room. Samuel's eyes widened. His fingers tightened around the toy horse. "Your son?" he whispered. "Yes," Nathaniel said. "Your mother and I, we knew each other long ago. I did not know she carried you when she left. That is my crest on your locket, and the mark on your shoulder is the same as mine. I should have been there from the beginning. I was not. But if you will let me, I will be there now." Clara watched Samuel's face. Hope and fear chased each other across his features. She wanted to step in, to shield him from any more pain, but she knew this was not her moment. "My father never came," Samuel said, almost accusing. "Mama cried about it sometimes. Mrs. Carter said he was a great man who forgot them." Nathaniel closed his eyes for a second. "I did not know," he said. "That is not an excuse. It is only the truth. I cannot change what I failed to do, but I can change what I do next." He dropped to one knee so he was level with Samuel's eyes. "Samuel," he said quietly, "if you allow it, I will claim you. I will give you my name, my home, and my care. Not because of the crest, but because you are my child. You deserve better than to grow up thinking you were not wanted." Tears blurred Clara's vision. She looked away, giving them a small measure of privacy. Samuel frowned, thinking hard. "Will Mrs. Hayes come too?" he asked suddenly. Clara's head snapped up. "Samuel," Nathaniel glanced at her, then back at the boy. "Would you wish that?" he asked. Samuel nodded. "She stayed with me when I was burning. She held my hand. She made soup that didn't taste very nice, but she smiled at me anyway." He looked at Clara with quiet trust. "I don't want to go with a stranger, even if he is a duke." Nathaniel's gaze softened. "I can understand that," he said. He stood slowly and turned to Clara. "Mrs. Hayes, Clara, may I call you that?" He did not wait for an answer. "I owe you more than I can say. You did what I should have done from the beginning. You protected my son." Clara shook her head. "I only did what any decent person would do," she said. "Many would not," Nathaniel replied. "I cannot take Samuel away to a great stone house where he knows no one and expect him to feel safe. If you would be willing, I would like him to come to Ashbourne Hall under your care." Clara's heart lurched. "You mean as nurse? As governess?" "As guardian," Nathaniel said carefully. "At least for a time, until he knows me well enough to feel secure without you. There is a small house on the edge of my estate, the old gamekeeper's lodge. It is comfortable and separate enough to protect your reputation. I would arrange everything. You would answer only to your own conscience and to what Samuel needs." Clara swallowed. The idea of leaving the village, her husband's old surgery, the life she had known, filled her with a strange mix of fear and curiosity. She thought of Samuel's thin arms, his small hand in hers at night, when fever dreams woke him. "I cannot act without thinking," she said plainly. "And I will not go anywhere alone with you, Your Grace. I am a widow, but I have my name. If I come, it must be with a respectable chaperone, and my authority over Samuel's daily care stays with me. I will not let him be pushed aside if other concerns arise." Nathaniel nodded without hesitation. "Agreed," he said. "You may choose the chaperone yourself if you wish, and I give you my word, before God, that I will not interfere with what you judge best for Samuel's health and heart." Clara searched his face. She saw tiredness there, and regret, and something else, a quiet, stubborn hope. It was not the face of a careless man. "Then let us ask Samuel," she said. "It is his life we are speaking of." They both turned to the boy. He had been following their words with wide, serious eyes. "Samuel," Clara said gently, "the Duke is asking if you would like to come live on his land for a while. There would be more food, more room to run, maybe even horses to see. But it would mean leaving this village. I would come with you and another lady to make sure everything is proper. We would not force you. It is your choice." Samuel gripped the toy horse until his knuckles whitened. He looked at the Duke, at Clara, at the walls of the little room, worn smooth by years of use. He had already lost so much. The thought of leaving what little he knew must be frightening. "My mother wanted me to have a better life," he said slowly. "She said so, when she thought I was asleep. She said she dreamed of me running in big fields and not going to bed hungry." He swallowed. "If he really is my father, then maybe that's what she meant." He turned his gaze on Nathaniel. "Will you be angry if I am scared?" Nathaniel's throat tightened. "Never," he said. "I am scared too, if we are honest. I do not know how to be a father yet, but I will try every day." Samuel nodded once, as if that was enough. "Then I will go," he said, "but only if Mrs. Hayes comes too." Clara felt something swell in her chest, warm and painful all at once. She gave him a small smile. "Very well, Samuel," she said. "We shall go together." Nathaniel let out a slow breath he had not realized he was holding. He closed Samuel's hand gently around the locket. "Then it is decided," he said quietly. "We will leave in 2 days' time." As he stepped back out into the lane, the cold wind hit his face. Children stared at him as he crossed to his horse, curiosity bright in their eyes. He wondered what they would say if they knew that the Duke of Ashbourne had just found his son in a doctor's widow's front room. He placed his hand over the pocket where Clara's letter rested. "He is my son," he whispered again, to the gray sky and the wet earth, and to himself. "And I will not fail him this time." 2 days later, the road to Ashbourne wound like a brown ribbon through hills and fields. The air was cold but clear. Thin sunshine lay over the bare trees, and crows watched from the branches as the small group passed. Clara rode in the Duke's carriage with Samuel and Mrs. Potter, a stout, sensible widow from the village who had agreed to come as chaperone. She wore a dark dress and a firm look, but her hands were gentle when she handed Samuel a shawl or straightened his cap. Samuel pressed his face to the carriage window, his breath fogging the glass. "Is all this land his?" he asked at one point, pointing to a long field where sheep grazed. "So I understand," Clara said. "A duke's lands are wide." Samuel frowned. "That seems like too much for one person," he said. "Doesn't he get tired of it?" Clara hid a smile. "Perhaps he does," she said. "But land is not like a coat you can give away when you are tired. It comes with many duties." Samuel turned this over in his mind. "Then I will help," he said firmly. "If I am his son, I should help." Clara looked at him, at the serious set of his jaw. "You are a child," she said softly. "Your first duty is to learn and grow. The rest can come later." He did not answer, but he did not argue either. When the carriage turned off the main road and onto a long drive lined with tall oaks, Samuel's eyes widened. At the far end of the lane, Ashbourne Hall rose from the earth like something from a story. Gray stone walls, many chimneys, tall windows that caught the light. It was not pretty in the usual sense, but it had a kind of strength that was almost a person of its own. "Is that where he lives?" Samuel whispered. "Yes," Clara said. Even she felt small looking at it. But the carriage did not stop at the grand front steps. Instead, it turned down a narrower lane to the right, where the trees grew closer and the ground dipped toward a small river. After a short distance, they came to a smaller house of warm brick with a slate roof and smoke curling from the chimney. "That is the gamekeeper's lodge," Nathaniel said, riding up beside the carriage. His hair was blown wild by the wind, his coat spattered with mud. Yet he seemed more at ease on horseback than Clara had ever seen him in her little surgery room. "If it meets your approval, it will be your home for as long as you wish." The carriage stopped. Clara climbed out first, then turned to help Samuel. He took her hand and held it tightly as he stepped down. Mrs. Potter followed, smoothing her skirt and squinting at the house. The lodge stood in a small clearing with a low stone wall around a front garden. The path was neat. Curtains hung in the windows. Someone had swept the steps. It looked cared for, not forgotten. "It is lovely," Clara said honestly. Nathaniel dismounted and gave his reins to a waiting groom. "I have had it aired and furnished," he said. "If anything is lacking, you need only inform Mrs. Kent, my housekeeper. She will see to it. I hope you will think of this as your space, not an outbuilding." Mrs. Potter sniffed, though not unkindly. "We shall see about that," she said. "Come along, boy. Let's look inside." The rooms were small but bright. A fire burned in the main room's hearth, sending out a friendly heat. There were 2 bedrooms upstairs and a little room off the back that would do well for Samuel. The furniture was simple but strong. A vase of winter berries sat on the mantel, an unexpected touch that made Clara's throat tighten. Nathaniel stood in the doorway, watching her face. "Will it do?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "It will do very well. Thank you, Your Grace." He waved a hand. "If you are to help me care for my son, I can at least offer you solid walls," he said. Then more quietly, "And perhaps, in time, something like peace." Mrs. Potter clicked her tongue. "Well, we won't find peace standing about in the cold," she said. "Samuel, come see your room. Clara, we'll need to unpack your bag and that box of medicines." Samuel's room had a small bed, a narrow window looking out over the fields, and a wooden chest at the foot. On the window-sill lay a little carved bird, its wings spread wide as if about to fly. "Did you put this here?" Samuel asked, picking it up. Nathaniel stepped into the doorway. "My grandfather carved that for me when I was your age," he said. "I thought it might watch over you as it once watched over me." Samuel turned the bird in his hand. "Thank you," he said shyly. Nathaniel cleared his throat. "Would you like to see the stables later?" he asked. "There are horses and dogs, if you like dogs." Samuel's eyes lit up despite his tiredness. "Yes, please," he said at once. "Then after you have had something to eat and a bit of rest, we shall go," Nathaniel said, and smiled. It was the first smile Clara had seen on his face that reached his eyes. That afternoon the sun broke through the clouds as they walked toward the stables. Samuel walked between Clara and Nathaniel, holding Clara's hand, but glancing often at the Duke as if he was not sure how close he was allowed to be. The stables stood behind the big house, long and low, with warm light spilling from the open doors. The smell of hay and horses wrapped around them as they stepped inside. A stableman tipped his hat. "Afternoon, Your Grace. This must be the young gentleman you told us about." Samuel's cheeks turned pink. He looked up at Nathaniel. "This is my son, Samuel," Nathaniel said, the words still new and strange, but good in his mouth. "Samuel, this is Mr. Briggs. He takes care of the horses." Mr. Briggs grinned. "Pleased to meet you, young sir," he said. "We've someone I think you'll like." He led them down the line of stalls to a chestnut mare with a white star on her forehead. She snorted softly and leaned her head over the door. "This is Molly," Briggs said. "She's gentle as they come." Samuel hung back, half hidden behind Clara's skirt. "It's all right," Clara said softly. "She won't hurt you." Nathaniel stepped forward and stroked the mare's neck. "See," he said, "she is kind." He looked back at Samuel. "I was afraid of horses when I was small," he admitted. "My father laughed at me. It made it worse. I will not laugh at you." Samuel looked at him, surprised. Slowly he stepped forward until he stood just within reach of Molly's soft nose. "What if she bites?" he whispered. "She won't," Briggs said. "But put your hand flat so she doesn't mistake your fingers for carrots." Samuel held out his hand, palm open. Molly's warm breath brushed his skin. She nuzzled his fingers, searching for treats. A small, delighted smile broke across his face. "She's soft," he said. Nathaniel felt something loosen in his chest. "You are brave," he said quietly. "I was scared," Samuel said. "Being brave does not mean not being scared," Nathaniel replied. "It means doing the thing even when you are." The boy thought about this as he stroked the horse's nose. Then he glanced up at Clara. "Will you ride her?" he asked her. "Oh, no," Clara said at once, laughing. "I will leave that to you and the Duke. My feet are quite happy on the ground." Nathaniel watched the way she laughed, the way the sound relaxed Samuel's shoulders. He noticed the strain around her eyes from the long journey, the fine lines that grief and work had carved into her face. She was not young. She was not polished like the ladies in London drawing rooms. But there was a steadiness in her, a quiet light that made the dark corners of his mind feel less sharp. Later, when they walked back to the lodge in the fading light, Samuel chattered about Molly and the other horses, about the big house they had seen from a distance, about the dogs he had glimpsed in the yard. "Can we go again tomorrow?" he asked. "If your lessons are done," Clara said. "You will not spend your days only in the stables. We will read and write and learn sums. Even Dukes' sons must know how to add." Samuel wrinkled his nose but nodded. "Mrs. Hayes?" he asked after a moment. "Yes?" "Is it all right if I call you something else?" he asked, his voice suddenly small. "Mrs. Hayes sounds like you're far away." Clara's steps slowed. "What would you like to call me?" she asked. He looked down at the path, kicking a stone. "Maybe, Aunt Clara," he said, "if you don't mind." Warmth rushed through her, sudden and fierce. She swallowed past the lump in her throat. "I would like that very much," she said. He smiled, shy but pleased. "Aunt Clara," he said again, as if testing how it felt. The words settled between them and wrapped around her heart like a soft scarf. Behind them, Nathaniel walked in silence, his hands clasped behind his back. He had heard. The simple words struck him deeply. This boy, who had known so little safety, had still found room in his heart to reach out to others. And Clara, who had lost her own chance at a child, gave herself to him without holding back. That night, after Samuel was asleep and Mrs. Potter had retired, Clara sat in the main room with a cup of tea growing cold in her hands. The fire had burned low. The house was quiet. A knock sounded at the door. She stood, heart thumping. When she opened it, Nathaniel stood there, coat off, shirt sleeves rolled. He looked younger and more tired without the formal layers. "I hope I am not calling too late," he said. "I saw the light." "It is quite late," she said, though her tone was not sharp. "Is something wrong? Is Samuel—" "He is sleeping," Nathaniel said quickly. "I just checked on him. He is holding that carved bird so tightly, I fear it may break." There was a hint of a smile in his voice. It faded as he went on. "No, I came to speak to you, if I may." Clara hesitated, then stepped aside. Mrs. Potter's door was open a crack at the far end of the hall. She caught Clara's eye and gave a small nod that said, "I am here, if needed." Nathaniel seemed to notice and gave a brief nod as well, a silent sign that he understood the need for care. They sat by the hearth, leaving a proper distance between them. The firelight threw soft shadows on the walls. "You were right," Nathaniel said after a moment. "About what?" Clara asked. "In your letter," he said, "you wrote that the world can be cruel to the small and the poor. You were not wrong. I have been thinking of how often I have turned my eyes away from that fact. It is easy to forget in a house of stone that there are people outside its walls." Clara looked into the fire. "We all look away from things that hurt to see," she said. "I did the same after my husband died. I stopped going to births. I stopped helping with small injuries. It reminded me too much of sitting beside his bed, unable to save him." "And yet you opened your door to Samuel," Nathaniel said. "You did not turn away then." "I could not," Clara said simply. "He was there." They sat in silence for a while. "I do not know how to be what he needs," Nathaniel said quietly. "Today, watching you speak to him, how you did not rush him, how you understood when he was afraid. I saw how far I have to go. My own father thought a son should be shouted into courage. I think it only taught me to hide my fears better." Clara turned to look at him. The firelight showed the tired lines on his face. "Samuel does not need you to be perfect," she said. "He needs you to be present, to show up even when you are unsure, to listen, to say when you are wrong." He gave a short, soft laugh. "That is almost harder than learning how to ride," he said. She smiled faintly. "Hard things are often the most important," she said. Their eyes met. For a brief second, something passed between them, an understanding, a shared grief, a shared hope. It made the room feel suddenly very small. Nathaniel looked away first. He cleared his throat. "I will try," he said, "for Samuel's sake." "For your own as well," Clara said. He stood. "Thank you, Clara," he said, "for coming here, for staying, for letting him call you aunt." She stood, too. "Thank you for not taking him away from everything he knew," she replied. "Some fathers might have." He bowed his head, then turned to go. At the door he paused. "Good night," he said. "Good night, Your Grace," she answered. When the door closed and the house was quiet again, Clara pressed a hand to her chest. Her heart beat too fast. She told herself it was only the day's strain. But long after she lay in bed, listening to the wind outside, she could still see the look in Nathaniel's eyes when he had spoken of trying. It scared her more than she cared to admit. Winter deepened around Ashbourne Hall. Snow came in soft waves, covering the fields and the roofs in white. Smoke curled from chimneys. The river ran black between its frozen edges. Inside the gamekeeper's lodge, life settled into a new shape. Each morning, Clara woke Samuel, shared breakfast with him and Mrs. Potter, and then sat with him at the table to practice reading and writing. At first he groaned and dragged his feet, but he soon learned that Clara would not be moved by sighs or complaints. Still, she made room for stories and small jokes, and he found that letters were not as dull when they came together to make tales about brave sailors and clever girls. After lessons there were walks if the weather allowed, or quiet games by the fire if it did not. Often, in the afternoons, Nathaniel would come by to take Samuel to the stables or to walk the fields. At first, Samuel stayed close to Clara when the Duke arrived, but slowly that changed. One day, Clara watched from the window as Samuel ran ahead to meet Nathaniel, waving his cap. The sight made her chest ache and glow at the same time. At night, when the house was quiet, Clara would sit by the fire with her sewing while Mrs. Potter darned socks or read. Sometimes, through the thin walls, they could hear laughter from the big house, or music when guests came to dine. It felt like another world, close enough to touch yet far from their simple rooms. One evening, after they had been at Ashbourne for some weeks, Mrs. Potter set her knitting down and gave Clara a long look. "You care for that boy as if he were your own," she said. Clara's needle paused. "He is in my care," she replied. "It would be wrong to do less." "That's not what I meant," Mrs. Potter said. There's a look you get when he calls you aunt, like something that was empty is full now." Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. "You are not wrong," she said quietly. "I never had the chance to hear a child call me anything at all." Mrs. Potter's face softened. "You're a good woman, Clara," she said. "Whatever happens, remember that." Clara did not ask what she meant by "whatever happens." She did not need to. The thought she pushed away each day sat in the corner of her mind like a shadow. Nothing in this life was truly secure. Nathaniel could wake one morning and decide things must change. He could marry some lady from London, bring home a duchess who wanted no village widow near her stepson. Or he could send Samuel to school far away. Doors that had opened could close again. She tried not to think of it. She failed often. The change came on a clear night near the end of winter. The sky was bare and cold, the stars sharp. Clara had just finished tucking Samuel into bed when there was a knock at the lodge door. She frowned. It was late for a visit. Mrs. Potter had gone to the vicarage for a church women's meeting and had not yet returned. Clara went downstairs and opened the door a crack, ready to close it quickly if needed. Nathaniel stood there, his face pale in the starlight. He wore no coat, only a heavy sweater, as if he had left the house in haste. "Is something wrong?" Clara asked at once. "Is Samuel—" "He is fine," Nathaniel said. "I came to speak with you. May I come in?" Clara hesitated, then stepped aside. She left the door slightly open, letting the cold air remind them both of the world outside. It felt safer that way. They sat by the fire again, the same as that night weeks ago. But this time, Clara felt a different sort of tension in the air, thick and strange. Nathaniel stared at his hands for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low. "My sister wrote to me from London last week," he said. "She heard somehow that there is a child here. People always hear. She asked what I plan to do with him." Clara's shoulders tightened. "And what did you tell her?" she asked. "I did not answer yet," he said, "because I realized I do not even know how to answer myself." He lifted his gaze to hers. The look in his eyes made her throat dry. "When I first came to Brambleton and saw Samuel on that table," he said slowly, "I thought only of making amends. I wanted to bring him here, give him food, a bed, and education. I thought that would be enough." "And now?" Clara asked. "Now I see it is not enough to place a boy in a fine house and call him son," Nathaniel said. "He needs more than my name. He needs a family, a place where he is not a guest or a duty, but simply loved." Clara's heart beat faster. "He has that," she said. "Here, with us, with you." "For now," Nathaniel said. "But I must think of his future. If something were to happen to me, what would become of him? The law is kinder to sons who are born inside marriage, not outside it. It is an unfair truth, but a truth all the same." Clara stared at him. Understanding dawned slowly, like light creeping over the edge of a hill. "Are you saying you plan to marry?" she said, "so that your future wife may take him in?" He drew a breath. "I am saying," he said carefully, "that I wish to ask if you would consider being that wife." Silence fell heavy in the small room. Clara felt as if the floor had dropped a little under her feet. "Me," she whispered. You cannot be serious." "I have never been more serious," Nathaniel said. His hands clenched on his knees. "I know this is sudden. I know I have little right to ask anything of you, but I have watched you these months. You are honest, strong, steady. Samuel trusts you in a way he has never yet trusted me. When he was sick, you sat by his bed without rest. When he is afraid, he reaches for your hand. If I could choose a mother for him, knowing what I know now, I would choose you." Clara's eyes burned. She stood up, too full of feeling to sit still. "This is not a story, Your Grace," she said. This is not some neat tale where the widow and the duke simply marry and all is well. I had a husband. I buried him. I know what it means to stand before God and promise my life. I cannot treat it like a clever solution to a problem." Nathaniel rose too. "Nor can I," he said. "I am not asking you to play a part. I am asking if you would be willing to share what is left of my life. Not out of romance, at least not now, but out of respect and common purpose. We both care for Samuel. We both know what it is to lose. Perhaps we could learn together what it is to build something new." His voice shook, but he did not look away. "I cannot promise to be a perfect husband," he went on. "I am too used to being alone, too used to carrying things myself. I am clumsy with feelings. I say the wrong thing more often than not, but I can promise to be loyal, to listen, to give you a place that is yours, not borrowed, and to treat you with honor before all." Clara's breath came fast. Her mind raced with pictures. Samuel's face when he laughed, the big house on the hill, her husband's empty chair in her old home, the one she still saw in dreams. "Do you love me?" she asked. The question hung between them, naked and sharp. Nathaniel closed his eyes for a moment. "I care for you deeply," he said at last. "I respect you. I am drawn to your courage. When you enter a room, it feels lighter. I do not know if what I feel is the sort of love people write poems about, but I know that when I think of my future and Samuel's, you are in it, and the thought of you leaving this place makes my chest hurt." It was a simple answer, not wrapped in sweet words. Somehow that made it strike truer. Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. She brushed them away with an impatient hand. "I do not know if I have room left in my heart for a husband," she said. "Sometimes I feel I gave all of it to the man who is gone. The rest I have given to Samuel." "Then perhaps that is enough for now," Nathaniel said softly. "Your love for him is part of why I ask. If in time there is more between us, I would count it as grace. If there is not, I will still be grateful for your presence." Clara walked to the window and looked out. The big house on the hill glowed with many windows lit. Somewhere up there, people laughed over wine. Down here, in the small lodge, the air was thick with a different kind of weight. "Samuel?" she whispered. What would this mean for him? "It would mean security," Nathaniel said. "He would be seen as my heir in truth, not only in fact. The law would protect him more strongly. No one could easily push him aside. And he would have you as his mother, not only his aunt in the eyes of the world." The word mother turned slowly in Clara's heart. It hurt, it healed, it scared her. "You must give me time," she said at last. "I cannot answer a question like this in one night." "Of course," Nathaniel said at once. "Take all the time you need. I only ask that you consider it. Truly consider it, not only for Samuel, but for yourself." He moved to the door, then stopped. "Whatever your answer," he said quietly, "know this. I am grateful to you. When I was too late, you were not. You saved my son. I will never forget that." Then he was gone, and the cold night air rushed in for a moment before the door closed again. Clara stood alone in the little room, her heart pounding. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass of the window and closed her eyes. "What am I to do?" she whispered. No answer came except the wind. Dawn brought a pale light and the sound of birds in the hedges. Clara had not slept much. She had watched the fire die down, built it up again, and turned the question over in her mind so many times it felt worn. When Samuel crept down the stairs, rubbing his eyes, she was already dressed, a shawl wrapped firmly around her shoulders. "Aunt Clara?" he asked. "Why are you up so early?" "I had thinking to do," she said. "Come, sit. I want to speak with you." He looked worried at once. "Am I in trouble?" "No," she said quickly. "This is more a matter of what might happen next." She sat him at the table and knelt beside his chair so she could look him in the eye. "Samuel," she said, "you know you are the Duke's son." He nodded. "Yes." "You know also that I care for you very much," she said. "If anyone tried to hurt you, I would stand in their way." He smiled a little at that. "I know," he said. "Last night the Duke came to ask me something," she went on. "He asked if I would consider marrying him." Samuel's mouth fell open. "Marrying?" he squeaked. "Like a real wedding?" "Yes," Clara said, her hands twisted in her lap. "Nothing is decided. I have not answered him yet. But if I did say yes, it would mean that I would not only be your Aunt Clara, I would be your father's wife. And in time, if you wished it, you might call me Mama." The word trembled in the air. Samuel stared at her. His lower lip shook. For a moment she feared he was about to cry. Then he burst out, "I thought you could never." "What do you mean?" she asked, startled. "I thought you could never be my mother," he said, words tumbling over each other. "Because you already had a husband who died, and I thought that meant your heart was full forever. But I wanted it so much. I wanted us to be a family, not bits of one." Tears welled in Clara's eyes again. "Samuel," she whispered. He grabbed her hands. "Do you want to?" he asked. "Do you want to marry him?" Her mouth opened, closed. Honesty rose in her like water. "I am afraid," she said, "afraid of losing someone again, afraid of not knowing how to share a life with another person. But when I think of leaving this place, of going back to the village without you, that thought hurts more than any of the others." He nodded fiercely. "Then don't go," he said. "Stay. Stay with us. Please." The plea in his voice broke the last hard knot inside her. She pulled him into her arms and held him tight. "Very well," she whispered into his hair. "I will stay. I will try. For you, for him, for myself." "Does that mean yes?" he asked, pulling back to search her face. She smiled through her tears. "Yes," she said. "It means yes." The wedding was small. There were no grand carriages lined up on the drive, no long rows of candles in the great hall. Instead, the ceremony took place in the old chapel at the edge of the estate, where ivy crept over the stones and the roof beams smelled of age and incense. Clara wore a simple blue dress. Her first wedding gown lay long gone in a trunk in another house, another life. She did not need white to know the meaning of the vows she spoke. Nathaniel stood beside her in a dark coat, his hands only shaking a little as he took hers. Samuel stood close to Clara's side, his small fingers gripping her skirt. The vicar spoke the old words. They answered, voices steady, promising to love and to honor, to share what came, for better or worse. When it was done, when rings had been placed on fingers and hands clasped, Samuel tugged at Clara's sleeve. "May I?" he whispered. She looked down at him. "May you what?" "May I call you Mama now?" he asked, his eyes huge and hopeful. Her heart swelled so much it almost hurt. "Yes," she said softly, "if you wish." "Mama," he said, the word bursting out of him like a bird taking flight. He threw his arms around her waist. Nathaniel watched them, his own eyes bright. He placed a hand on Samuel's head, then on Clara's shoulder. In that simple touch there was more feeling than many long speeches. Later, as they stepped out of the chapel into the pale sunlight, Mrs. Potter wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. "Well," she said gruffly, "about time this house had some sense in it." People smiled. The cold air felt less sharp. Years passed. Spring followed winter, and summer followed spring. The fields greened, were harvested, and lay bare again. The river rose and fell. In the gamekeeper's lodge, which was no longer called that by anyone who mattered, life went on. Samuel grew taller, his legs long and awkward, his jaw taking on more of his father's line. He rode Molly with easy grace now, raced the estate boys across the fields, and spent rainy afternoons with Clara over books far thicker than the simple readers he had first struggled with. He still wore the silver locket under his shirt. Sometimes he would press it and whisper a thanks to the mother he barely remembered, hoping she somehow knew he was safe. Clara found her days full. There were household matters to see to, tenants' troubles to listen to, wounds to tend when someone hurt themselves with a scythe or a kitchen knife. She organized visits to the poorer cottages, bringing bread and medicine. People began to speak of the Duchess in the same breath as the doctor's widow. And it felt right. At night, when the house was quiet, she sometimes sat by the fire with Nathaniel. They would speak in low voices about the day, about Samuel, about the estate. There were still moments of awkwardness, still days when grief rose up like an old ghost between them. But slowly, quietly, something else grew too. One evening, long after Samuel had gone to bed, Nathaniel reached across the small space between their chairs and took her hand. She did not pull away. "I have come to love you," he said simply. She looked at him. In his eyes she saw the same tired lines, the same stubborn hope, but now there was warmth there too, steady and gentle. "I know," she said. "I have come to love you too." It was not a grand declaration. It did not need to be. Their lives, woven together day by day, had already spoken most of the words. From upstairs came the sound of footsteps. Samuel appeared in the doorway, taller now, his hair rumpled. "I heard you talking," he said, rubbing his eyes. Clara smiled. "Go back to bed," she said. "You have lessons in the morning." He grinned. "Yes, Mama," he said, and vanished again. Nathaniel squeezed her hand. Outside, the wind moved through the trees around Ashbourne Hall. Inside, in the small house that had once been a lodge and was now something larger in its own quiet way, 3 hearts beat with a shared, imperfect, real kind of peace. Once a boy had arrived at a village widow's door with a fever and a silver locket. Now he slept under a roof where no one would ever again forget to call him son.